Welcome to Pointless Tutorials. And if you didn't learn anything, it's your own fault. You clicked on this. Anyway, I'm going to try and explain how to do the Donald Duck voice. When I was a very little child, I loved messing around with my mouth, making different noises. But I was always that adorable little kid who always followed the rules. And one day I got tired of it, and I was like thinking I was going to break the rules and everything. I was like, oh, I'm going to make a big fart noise in the class, and I'm going to be a bad boy. Because, that makes me a bad boy. And what happened was, instead of a fart, it came out as, and I was like, what happened? And so, it turns out what happened was, I accidentally blew upward instead of outward. Because if you blow outward, it turns into that. But if you blow upward, it turns into sort of a mower or a cat that's dying horribly. Or Donald Duck. And with Donald, what you want to do is you want to there's three aspects to him: the cheeks, the tongue, and the air. The cheeks are oftentimes what are vibrated to create the classic that Donald does. The tongue should be on the corner of your mouth, on the top of the roof of your mouth, which also intersects with the teeth. And so it should twist it slightly to the direction in which the tongue is facing.
And then you just apply pressure.
You're not even speaking when you're doing Donald. Donald Duck is actually not even in the throat. If you do Donald correctly, you will not feel any vibration down here when you are speaking as him, because you're pretty much creating a rudimentary voice box right here. Because if you look at my cheek,
the Donald Duck with pulses. And pulses right here.
It's all right there. And so what you got to do is you got to be able to learn how to direct the air inside your mouth. This took for me a little bit of time, because the only thing I used to be able to say in Donald was
hello.
And I eventually realized, if I can say hello, maybe I can say other stuff. And then I just started speaking. Turns out Donald Duck is more of a filter on your voice than it is actually a voice. The Donald Duck tone and everything, that's how they're able to make Huey, Dewey, and Louie in the older cartoons actually sound different, is because that Donald Duck is not only a filter, but he's also a voice underneath the and all of that. Donald Duck is like, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. He sort of sounds like he's from Brooklyn, but not really. He's very, very happy and bouncy, and he's very, very happy, and he's like, hey, what's the big idea? Yeah, he's sort of like a New Yorker, except for he's a lot cuter and a lot less scary. Yeah. Now, I'm just kidding. No offense to anyone who lives in New York. You guys are wonderful. And so, pretty much, you gotta do that voice. And then you gotta make sure that it's very happy and ecstatic. And then you gotta... You see, it's more about who the character of Donald is. Because once you get down the part, it just sounds weird if you don't have the character down. You gotta get the character down as well. I mean, you can have the technical ability and never dissect the character of Donald, but then you just be doing an impression. There's a difference between an impression and a character. Many voice actors will tell you this. A character is someone who in their head, you know exactly how they'd respond to everything because you've dissected their character. You know exactly how their emotions would play out. They are not just a cheap, thin imitation. Imitations, however, and impressions are pretty much you mimicking their exact words or quoting them. And I do impressions sometimes just to give people context. Like Donald saying, that's from Roger Rabbit. And, that's not my original words as Donald. So therefore he's not a character, but he's an impression because that I'm imitating something that has already existed. With Donald, I have to think in my head, oh, Donald, he's a really, really nice guy. He likes to do these things. He likes to be very happy, very, very much in control. And he's sort of an old guy. I mean, Donald's around 80 years old, if you think about it. So he's really used to the old ways. So Donald is very set in his ways. And so he's just when he doesn't get something his own way, he's like, hey, what's the big idea? Like, he's trying to figure out what is wrong. And so, you add that onto there, and then Donald has one of the worst tempers in the Disney universe. That's what you're told. But if you were inside Donald's head, you'd understand why he has to let it out so much. It's because Donald Duck does get stuck with all of the bad luck. That is his thing. The song is literally his point of view. Who's got the sweetest disposition? One guess that's who. Who never starts an argument. He's a little vain, and he might be a little wrong, but we all are. See, Donald is more... He's more like us. And that's personally why I like him out of the trio the most. Is because that he has anger issues. Goofy may be goofy, but that's just who he is. Donald has issues, and those issues help him be who he is. Donald is such a lovely character because he's so cute, but at the same time he can get worked up and you can see his problems so easily. He's perhaps the most transparent of the Disney characters. You ever see Mickey Mouse get mad? Only like once or twice. I mean, he does go like, and stuff like that, but really, Mickey is... He's a little bit more of an icon, so he can't show that. And I know Donald was more popular back in the 30s and 40s, but Mickey has definitely taken over. And the benefit for this, for Donald, is that Donald can have so many more emotions. He can do so much more. I mean, Mickey Mouse is a wonderful character, but Mickey is sort of limited by the years and years of him being the main face of Disney. Now, with Donald, he's one of the main faces. He probably is in other countries, too. And the big difference is that Donald has a very negative disposition of the world sometimes. And Donald just, he thinks that he can control everything. You see, that's the thing about people who have bad tempers, is that they're trying to control you. And, like, people with a temper are pretty much just people who are frustrating because they cannot control you. And, they don't get things their way. So Donald isn't angry all the time. He's just incredibly frustrated. And sometimes he does get proper angry, but it's usually just frustration. And so when Donald gets frustrated, he gets all flustered, and then it just... sort of like Richard Nixon almost. But at the same time, you gotta put that filter on, and once you do, it's... And so... That's how you do Donald getting mad. Donald's laugh, however, is the one thing that I have yet to be able to recreate on my own. I have to imitate it. It's sort of like... That takes a lot of diaphragm. Donald Duck requires a massive amount of air, but don't overdo it, because if you overdo Donald Duck, it can get messy. I've popped a few blood vessels in my brain. Well, not brain, but eye, leading into my brain. This was a long time ago when I was first figuring out how to do the voice. Also, it gives you a headache really easily if you use it too much. But also, I would suggest once you do it, at least practice the filter once a day, something like going or something. It's quite easy to do at first. Then it gets a little harder. But then it comes back to you. And the voice I've done for you is the Clarence Nash voice. There is, if you want to do Tony Anselmo, the current voice of Donald Duck, what you got to do is you got to be able to retract the tongue a little more and make it more, the end of the tongue, or the side of the tongue is on the teeth. And that'll give it more of a raspy noise for the filter. And this Donald's a bit more articulate and a bit more precise. And he's like, hey, what's the big idea? I'm Donald Duck. He's pretty cocky. He's a little bit newer, but at the same time, still set in his own ways. And if you add the filter on top, it's...
Hey, what's the big idea? My name is Donald Duck. Oh, then you will never love me.
And... there are a few phrases which can be mistaken for imitations, like, hey, what's the big idea? But as long as you're not saying it in the exact same tone and intonation that he always does, then you're fine. Donald Duck is a special character. He has always been special to me. Even before I realized I could do the voice, I've always loved Donald. And I hope you love Donald too. And I hope this has been helpful. If not, somebody else can probably explain it better than I.